You ever seen him?
Yeah, a long time ago.
What did you mean by 10 days?
Born George Randolph Scott. On January 23, 1898, in Orange County, Virginia, he became one of the most admired figures of Hollywood's golden age. With his tall frame, calm strength, and quiet authority, Scott embodied the American cowboy, a symbol of courage, justice, and integrity. But behind the legend of the man who ruled the western frontier was a soul marked by reflection, compassion, and an awareness of the personal battles others in his world were forced to fight. In his later years, Scott reportedly spoke candidly about the pain of secrecy many of his peers endured. He named 6 actors he admired deeply, men he knew had lived under the heavy shadow of social prejudice. Each one, in Scott's words, was a man of heart who carried the burden of silence. Cary Grant, the closest bond. Among them, Cary Grant stood first. Grant and Scott shared a remarkable friendship that began in the 1930s when they lived together for years in a beachfront home in Santa Monica. The press called them Hollywood's most eligible bachelors, but those who knew them saw a deeper companionship built on trust and affection. Both men understood that in their time, truth came with a price, one that could destroy everything they had worked for. Scott once said, "We shared a home, a rhythm, a peace. The world will never understand what it meant to simply belong." Montgomery Clift. The fragile genius. Next on his list was Montgomery Clift, one of Hollywood's most gifted and tortured actors. Behind his haunting performances in A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity was a man struggling with identity and pain. Scott described Clift as a poet of the screen, but one consumed by loneliness. Hollywood's glare offered no refuge for someone so open-hearted, and Clift's inner war eventually took a toll on his spirit. Merv Griffin, the performer behind the smile. Merv Griffin, a man known for his charm, success, and wit as a television icon, was another figure Scott mentioned. To the public, Griffin was a confident entertainer and media mogul, but privately, he carried the burden of discretion. Scott respected him for his kindness and resilience, calling him a man who gave joy to millions but carried his own truth quietly. Jim Nabors, the gentle soul. Jim Nabors, beloved as Gomer Pyle, was remembered by Scott as one of the warmest people he had ever met. Nabors' innocence and humor made him a household name, yet fame forced him to live carefully, concealing a love that would only be acknowledged decades later. Scott called him a man whose laughter came from love, and whose love the world was not yet ready to see. Cesar Romero, the gentleman of grace. The charismatic Cesar Romero, forever remembered as the Joker in the 1960s Batman series, was another man Scott admired. Known for his charm and wit, Romero played the role of a bachelor for public acceptance. Scott once said he was the definition of grace under disguise, a man whose sophistication concealed a heart full of restraint. Rock Hudson, the tragic hero. The final name was Rock Hudson, whose life mirrored the tragedy of his time. Handsome, talented, and adored by audiences, Hudson lived within walls built by fear of rejection. When his private life finally came to light during his illness in the 1980s, the world mourned him, not just for his death, but for the years he had to hide who he was. Scott reportedly said of Hudson, "He carried a secret too heavy for one man, yet he carried it with dignity." A quiet reflection. When Randolph Scott spoke of these 6 men, Grant, Clift, Griffin, Nabors, Romero, and Hudson, it wasn't gossip. It was remembrance. He saw in them the cost of fame and the courage it took to simply survive in an unkind era. The hardest role, Scott once said, is to be yourself when the world insists you play someone else. In honoring them, Scott also revealed something of himself, a man who understood that true strength is not silence, but empathy. His reflection remains a quiet tribute to those who lived bravely, even when they could not live freely.